Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, home of the world's largest sports book. Jed, thanks for the time. What's up, man?
Not much. When you guys like work from home, like do you like kind of wander around and do you guys sit in a desk? Because like when I do it, I just kind of wander outside talking to you guys. Like, how do you guys do it?
Yeah, so I'm in the office, but it's tough. Like you hear the 4-year-old or the 2-year-old screaming, and you're compelled to go help. But you're like, if I was downtown, they'd have to deal with this on their own. So then I don't help.
Jed, we're on camera too because everything's a visual medium now. So we have to look presentable. Also, I wear pants out of respect for the field. How about you when you work from home?
I'm probably wearing shorts and a T-shirt. And, I mean, so much of my job is on the phone. So the days I do work from home, I actually will, like, those are the days I'll put in, like, 20,000 steps just wandering around because I can't really sit still. And if I'm going to be on the phone, I might as well get some exercise. So that's usually my move is just those days that I'm working the phones, I just wander.
So do you wander?
Weird. I'm not going to lie, but I know it.
Well, you know, your job is weird. Do you wander with a smile these past 3 days? Are you wandering while smiling? You know, or do you wander less when the team is playing absurdly well, as they just did in Baltimore?
Yeah, it's been, I mean, honestly, I've wandered a lot, not with a smile, you know, this year. And, yeah, obviously, like, it's great. It's really impressive to go in there, you know, and play probably the best team in the American League and perform like that. You know, that's obviously fun to watch and gratifying to watch. And, you know, I think it's been an odd year in the sense of we played so well in April through a tough stretch. I mean, it was a hard schedule in April. We did great. And then we just didn't play well for such a long period. And you kind of kept waiting. Okay, we're going to come out of this. We're going to come out of this. And, you know, my hope is that now we're hopefully starting to come out of this. I think, you know, to a person, I think everyone feels like we're a much better team than we played in May and June. But at some point, you have to prove that, and hopefully, you know, one week of good baseball doesn't prove that, but it's a start, and hopefully we can build on this.
Does it remind you of last year?
I mean, again, we have to keep going, but like in terms of yeah, like having a really long period and then playing great. I mean, I remember the stretch we had before London last year. You know, I think we got to 10 under in LA, and then we went to San Francisco and won 2 out of 3, and then really hit. I was looking at the scores. Like really hit through that period. I think we played the Pirates and we played actually Baltimore and then the Pirates again, and really we swung the bats and we went into London on a high note, and then we kind of fell back down again and then did it again. But really the thing last year that it was a catalyst for all of our different hot streaks was the offense, and we had a really good offense last year, and that's been really what I've clearly been missing through that cold stretch was just like the total inability to spread games out, to score. Felt like we were playing a one-run or tie game every single night. And, you know, the nice thing about this stretch, and I hope it continues, is that we've been able to spread some games out and give some breathing room. And I think just as a team that has such a huge impact, you know, mentally, it has an impact on the bullpen, it has impact on the hitters. So I do feel like this part has felt like that in terms of scoring some runs and actually winning some games that aren't 2-1 or 3-2.
Is there a daily email with playoff odds going out to the baseball ops staff these days?
Not yet. I mean, it's something right now we're in draft meetings, and so we're focused on the draft, and I feel like that will definitely happen as we get kind of starting next Friday. We get past the draft and get into kind of real deadline stuff. I mean, right now, like we have everything set up from a kind of a deadline war room standpoint, like kind of all those things are there. But in the industry, like I've talked to so many different teams in the last week, and I think to a person, people talk about ideas or deals or needs or where they are. But, even as we learned last year, like these things change really rapidly, and, you still expect the lion's share of the action to happen in the last week and even in the last 2 or 3 days.
So last year you got up to about 27% playoff odds and ended up with doing the buy. And we wondered if the context changes things this year. Like it was supposed to be a competitive season. does that mean that it doesn't have to get quite that high to be a buy, or is it the same kind of parameters for you?
That's a good question. Last year, I think we talked about that. It just sort of felt like the way we were playing, and we'd already played that way for a stretch before, so it wasn't like out of nowhere. The way we played in that stretch, it felt like this is clearly the right thing to do for this group. And I think we'll see how we play. I think that's the most important thing. I don't think that it's not a pure science. There's no doubt you're not going to have a exact number, but I do think there's a lot of factors that have to go into it. How you're playing, health, where the other teams are. If all of a sudden a bunch of teams go on 10-game winning streaks, even if we play well, the odds could shrink dramatically. So there's so many factors. I would say the most important thing for us right now is that we went 8+ weeks playing really poor baseball. I think we all felt like that isn't who we are. This last week has been positive. My hope is that we can, continue to play well for the next, for the next couple of weeks, and hopefully with that, those odds that you talk about, keep going up. Because obviously, I certainly believe in this team on opening day. I certainly believe in this team on May 1st, and I still do. But obviously, we put ourselves in a position that's difficult, and now we have to fight, to dig out from under that position a little bit, and that can be difficult. I think we can do it, but we certainly haven't made our path as simple as possible.
That basically the belief, it has to wane a bit, right? Like it's not like you don't believe in the guys individually, but you can't deny reality.
Of course, absolutely, and but like how we play over this next stretch, I think that does mean a lot. I mean, this is a strange game, and our cold streak lasted much longer than I expected. I kept waiting for this to end, and it didn't. But then I look at the two teams in the World Series last year. They both had really long bad stretches. I look at this year, for example, the Yankees. They were incredible, and now I think they've lost 8 straight series. So in our sport, there's definitely ups and downs. Our down was much longer and deeper than I think we expected. But if we start to play well, I think at some point we balance those things out. And I do believe that we're a talented team. I think we're a deep team. And I think that we, at our best, I think we can compete and make the playoffs, but we've made that a very difficult thing by getting to 9 under and by really, by sort of giving up the early cushion that we had and going all the way in the other direction. Now we have to play really good baseball, I was thinking, to kind of get back to neutral. And we started that process now, but it has to keep going.
Jed, we've known you and talked to you for a long time. You and Theo, you guys talked about being now like a product of and a victim of some ways of your success. The bar has raised. You're 4 years into a 5-year deal. Like, do you personally feel pressure? Does that matter and factor into this thing, given you're the guy in charge now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally fair question. I mean, I always think to myself, and the kind of way I was raised and taught is like, once you say me or I in this game, like you've done something wrong. I feel like, my first year, we obviously slashed payroll. We traded away the core. I think that like at the end of that first year, sort of where we were as an organization was not positive, and I'm super proud of going to the beginning of this year, having a top 2 farm system, having a really talented team. I think that like we've obviously made great strides. Our May and June were disappointing, and that's undeniable. It's not about me. I think that, I'm proud of our staff and we've made really good decisions, but obviously I think that we need to, we need to do better than we did in May and June. But I never, it's not about me. It's about our staff. It's about, making good decisions and doing the right thing for the Cubs. Lord knows the Cubs are certainly bigger than I am.
Hey, Jed, now that Craig has been here for half a season and gotten to know his players and the roster, has his voice increased in terms of the decision, in terms of his input on roster decisions? Does he get a louder voice the longer he's here and learns the players?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this. I I really value his input and his intelligence. And I just talked to him for half an hour, and we weren't talking about platoon matchups or things like that. We were just kind of talking like things about our team, philosophical things. He's very bright. He studies the material, and so it's kind of exactly what you want. You want that person to be a partner in the decision. You want him to have a voice because he's the one down there every single day. And I do think he has a mind in a way, like he thinks like a manager first, but he also, he could come up and do our job as well. And I think that's really valuable as he thinks about deals or thinks about, the organization. So I talk to him all the time. Carter does all the time. And I really do value, his input. I think he's really good at it and really balanced.
It's safe to say this is the most you've ever involved a manager in your career as an executive?
Yeah, I would say that, but I would also say he has a different skill set than some of the other guys I've been around. I've been around some really great managers and, Hall of Fame managers, and I think that, they just probably took a little bit less interest in the front office part sometimes, and so this is the first time I've had a manager that really, like I said, he worked in the front office. I think his mind works that way. So I just think it's a different interest level. Terry Francona was an incredible manager without question, but I don't think his mind didn't gravitate towards some of those nuances or aspects of the game. I think Craig's does, and I think it kind of leads to more conversations and more involvement.
We're talking to Jed Hoyer, and Jed Hoyer supports Lurie's Children's Hospital, ranked the #1 children's hospital in Illinois by the U.S. News and World Report, located, of course, 225 East Chicago Avenue in downtown Chicago. And we'll also be telling some great stories of success from Lurie's coming up on our Cubs for a Cure Radiothon, August 15th and 16th, ahead of the big Cubs for a Cure weekend. Wanted to talk about a few individual guys with you, Jed. Ben Brown, can you explicitly or directly explain to Cubs fans what the injury is and what's going on?
Not well. So I would say the simplest way I can say it, and I don't think I'm violating any HIPAA regulations, is that, his neck had been stiff. He'd been pitching with it, sort of manageable, and it got to a point that he really didn't feel like it was manageable. So we started to try to figure out what it was. And we went through, he's been to a bunch of different experts and trying to figure out what was causing it. There was no disc issues. So it was really a question of some bone issues. And ultimately now it's really a matter of sort of him getting rid of the stiffness before he can really pitch at his level. So definitely a confusing one, complicated, trying to figure out exactly what was causing that stiffness. And to his credit, he pitched exceptionally well with it. But I think he got to a point, it worsened and got to a point where he just felt like I'm feeling this a lot when I'm out there. We haven't gotten to a point yet where he's throwing and doing those things, but he hasn't gotten to a point yet where he feels like, okay, I can just be free and easy and let it go. And obviously he's a super valuable pitcher for us now and in the future, so we don't want to push him past anything that's too much. So my hope is that it will continue to improve that stiffness, and he'll get to a point where, he's back. And obviously he's been keeping his arm in shape, which is good. And therefore, hopefully when he does get to be pain-free or does get to be stiffness-free, that he'll be able to ramp up quickly.
So you haven't written him off as a potential contributor for this season just yet?
No, not at all. Not at all. But that said, do I have a clear timeline? No, I don't think this is an injury that has a clear timeline. And, it's been one, like I said, we gotten a lot of opinions and we've sent him to a bunch of doctors. The reason we would do that, of course, is that it was somewhat muddy, trying to figure out exactly what was causing it. And so, I don't have a clear timeline of when he'll be ready.
Jed, in terms of the hitters, we've been noting the line drive rate as an offense was 29th out of 30th for a long time. Fly ball rate was pretty high, but the homers were down. So it reads like a team that doesn't quite have the pop to hit it out, but is still trying to hit the ball in the air, which of course is the way that a lot of the league functions. With this recent stretch, have you seen them hitting more line drives? And has that been a thought process or a conversation at all on a group level?
Yeah, well, I think you always want to hit more line drives. I mean, really, there's a lot of things we were 29th and 30th in if you go back to that stretch. And I know, looking at it, it was, at one point, I think over about a 60-game stretch, I think we had the lowest batting average and the lowest slug, which is a pretty bad recipe to score runs. And, when I look at our team, last year, I think we were sixth in baseball in run scoring. This year we're well below that. You would look at, stats like slugging percentage and batting average were well below where we were. So I do feel like, we were, and situationally, I would add, with guys in scoring position for that 60 or so games, we were dead last in a lot of categories by a pretty significant margin. But we're also the same group of players that were, really in the top 2 or 3 in those categories in April. And not surprisingly, during this streak, we look more like the April team than that. And so I do feel like, we spent so much time looking at, like, why is our offense not performing? What is going on? Why is this happening at the same time? I fully expect that we're going to get better over the rest of the season. I do think, like, there's, who knows? Like, last year we were 6th. Maybe that was a hair higher than we probably should be in run scoring. But ultimately, I know we're not the team we have been so far. And so my hope is that, like, we have some positive regression. I think we've seen, Michael Bush is playing great right now. Ian's had a really nice stretch. Hopefully Seiya's getting hot. I think as we get some of these guys performing and getting hot, and especially doing it situationally, I think we'll see our offense tick up. We are not the offense we were for 2 months. My hope is that, as we start to have that regression to the mean, my hope is that we score a lot of runs, and that helps us, just helps us spread a bunch of games out.
That's what it's looked like this past week. Bush and Happ and Seiya seem to be rolling, and Dansby with a good couple of days in a row. Would you like to take another victory lap on Bush, or do you want to wait? Should we get you for that later in the year?
No, I mean, there's no victory laps in this game, but like, right, listen, he's been really good. I think the things that, he did well in the minors, he's done well in the majors. He makes really good decisions at the plate, and I think that puts him in a lot of good counts to hit. And I think it's been impressive. And I think also, like, I'm impressed with him that, he was hot and then he was cold. And, like, I think he worked through his struggles and worked through those things, maturely, which is hard. Like, when you start struggling in the big leagues, and, like, it's hard to just work through those struggles. And so it's impressive to me that he's now sort of gotten hot again. And, I do think that, like, with offense, it is sometimes about getting, multiple guys hitting well at the same time, that, like, and it felt like we couldn't get that going. We really, when we had that stretch, no one in particular was, like, really had a hot streak, that carried us for 3 or 4 days. And I think Ian kind of came the closest to that when he hit the 2-3 run homers. And so hopefully we can get some guys now that can, like I said, can start to get hot. And if you get a couple of guys, just even a couple, I think that can, like, really lift an offense. And felt like we went months without that, and so hopefully we can start going in that direction.
Counsell is disarmingly steady publicly. Like, we interview him every other week. I've known him for a long time. I know he's crazy competitive, so I'm sure you've seen some ups and downs in the emotion. But, like, who is that? Like, you have to calm Tom down. Is Carter throwing stuff? Like, who's the hothead in the circle of trust?
I'm probably always the emotional one, but no, it's really impressive. It is.
It's crazy.
Counsell's so steady. Well, and it's what you need to go through. You go through 162 games, and like I was saying earlier, like, even the best seasons I've been a part of, there was at least a 2-3 week period where we were awful. And so, unfortunately, we stacked those 2 months on top of each other. But the idea. I mean, the idea, like, he's coming in day out, being the same person, believing in the players, like, being encouraging, like, he does that every single day. And, I think he really does. Like, I've been around managers that don't get too low, but they can get pretty high, at times. And, like, I feel like with him, it's like, it's just, nope, you going after a win or a loss. There's not a lot of difference in demeanor. We kind of talk through roster moves or talk through, something, but there's not, he's kind of on to the next thing very quickly, which I think is probably a lifetime in the game watching, and is probably his personality. But I do think that that steadiness, it really does pay off because, players need a steady hand. They need to know who's making decisions. They need to know the person making decisions every day is steady. And he is that, times 100.
Jed, one other thing about Seiya, who's been hitting the ball so well, but is what can be done or has been done to try and help him in right field? There's been some drops. I've saw someone refer to it as the yips or indecision. Nico almost got hurt last night as they collided. Is that a conversation or is it tricky business to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. Obviously, he has struggled out there at times. Not something that was anticipated. He obviously had a really good reputation defensively in Japan, and I think that he has all the tools to be a really good right fielder. He's fast, he can throw, but yeah, he's definitely even going back to last year, showing some of that on balls, and yeah, I think that the honest answer probably is it's tricky, but I think it's something we have to keep working on the right way. But yes, it's it has been unusual and it doesn't go unnoticed. And hopefully it's something he gets through, and hopefully he just keeps hitting, because a big part of why we were good last year in July and August was the fact that he took off.
Whatever you guys did with Lester, and he got over the throw into first thing. So, just use that methodology, Jed.
Hey, I'll give Joe so much credit on that because it was such a big problem, especially in 2015. It was just terrible, and he just sort of embraced it. It was really impressive. Like, he just said, okay, you can't throw to first, no problem. Like, he kind of set up everything with Wilson and Rossi and Rizzo, and it was just kind of Joe did such a good job with that, of making that a non-issue. That was impressive. He deserves a lot of credit for that.
Well, Jed, we're enjoying working from home. Get your 20,000 steps in. If you are, I'm not putting on pants, even though we're talking to the president of the